Right. Well, hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of ValueCast. I'm here today to talk about specifically value in procurement. Before we get into it, you'll see another face on the screen with me. How are you doing, Keith? Are you well?
Yeah, very good. Very, very well, thank you. Another end to another week.
Yes. Yeah, they roll through so quickly. Unfortunately, they tend to get slower when winter comes. Prefer it if they're a little bit slower during the summer. But yeah, look, Keith, it'd be great before we delve into things. I would love people to know a little bit about you. Obviously, a lot do know you, but there's a lot that don't.
Yeah, of course.
So give us a little overview of how you've got to where you are right now.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so I've been consulting with my own business for about 3.5 years. So I've been in business for, well, pretty much since I left school, like most people, but 30 years, but had about 27 years in two big corporate PLCs. So I kind of done the corporate role for quite some time. And then in 2021 decided I'd had enough of the corporate world at that moment in time, set the consultancy business up. And it's all about procurement. So, most of my career has been in commercial and procurement strategy. So, I was really keen to explore that. It's such an important topic, and I'm a bit biased because I've done procurement for a long time. But to me, it's an absolute foundational element of any successful business. So, being able to go out there and consult with businesses, typically in the building industry. So, think like manufacturers of products, think distributors, merchants. I've also worked with a few startups and different businesses since I've set up. So, really broad, varied set of clients, but tending to be with that sort of commercial procurement excellence hat on.
Good. So you don't really remember the corporate life. I suppose 3.5 years is quite a long time. Like I've been doing it for sort of away from my corporate life for a year and a half now, and it feels like about 5. So
I've still got some scars. I've stopped waking up in the night with sweat, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, there's sometimes there's the odd nightmare you see, but I can only imagine the value that it's brought you in your consultancy business having that level of experience, because without it, how can you best advise businesses?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I jest. I mean, I've had many good years, and was the backbone of how much I learned and how many opportunities got created for my career, to this point. So, it's certainly put me in good stead for the future things that I can do.
Yeah, definitely. Not to go into detail, but obviously you've also authored a book, which is quite a daunting thing to do. It's a very good, concise read. I think it's very, very, very powerful. Well, hence the word of the book being, the power of professional procurement. I tell you, I've probably written 5 books in my life, but actually never put them down. So well done for doing that, because I know it's not easy.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, do you know what? I mean, I do think there's a book in everybody, it does. But then most things in life that are big and perhaps challenging look daunting. But when you break it down into a process and be consistent, then actually it's amazing. It's amazing what's in here. The amount of experience that all of us have got. We've all got a super power of some sort. It's just until you document, it's actually quite a cathartic process as well to write all these things down. We talked about corporate, but good experiences, bad experiences. There's many things that we pick up, and you can start, drawing from some of those things to bring that experience to life, which was really the ethos of the book.
Yep. Well, and the reason I mention it is because the topics we're talking about today, you did write a lot about that within there. So if we delve into it a little bit, value in procurement, it means so many things, right? It's the essence of procurement, right? Is to provide value. But I'm quite a big believer on the fact that that's great that you've got processes in place. It's great that you've got a supply chain. But what are you doing to consistently ensure you're getting the value you expect out of your supply chain, but also, I suppose, procurement in general? Before I do, though, if you were to pinpoint 2 or 3 top things of what value means in procurement, what would that be to you? I was always quite interested, because some people say values one thing, someone says another.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I'll start with a sort of a positioning piece, which to me is the difference between what I'd call like purchasing or buying and procurement. So, if I think about, we're all buyers, we all buy stuff. We go shopping, we buy cars, we buy holidays, we buy whatever. So anyone can buy something, and often it can be a cost thing. So you'll have a budget. What's the most I can get for that cost? Or actually, what's the cheapest I can physically buy something, depending on your sort of state of mind. So to me, that's not overly complex. Yes, you can negotiate different things, but it's not overly hard to buy things that are competitive or costly, or even that horrible word called cheap. And I think that's the difference with procurement, where you bring in the value element. So yes, I want to be competitive, but actually what I don't want to have is a supply chain that suddenly in 12 months time falls apart because I've absolutely screwed every last penny out of it. Or suddenly you think the supplier's got nowhere to go, so they start value engineering the product. So actually what you thought you were buying over time gradually decreases because they think I need to get some margin back. So the value bit for me is saying I've got something that, yes, is competitive in my market, but it's reliable in quality, in innovation, in supply chain investment, in capability, and all of those things that make that, those are the extra things that go on top of just having something that's fit for purpose or right for your market. That's the true value bit for me.
No, that makes perfect sense. And you mentioned a couple of important things which sort of twigged in my mind. It's to your point. Great, you've got a great price to start with. You feel like you've got the quality, but then what are you doing throughout the life cycle of your relationship with the supplier to make sure you continue to get that quality? And I picked up a few things when I was reading through. But it's funny when you read someone's book, because you sort of feel like you know them more than you do, type thing. But you talked about some really solid things around your ACE method. And the reason I mention it, and also Procurement Accelerator, your ways of working, but all these things to me, once you've got to that point of initially buying, they're all critical things that you talk about to help get that level of consistency across the life cycle of what you're managing. No, go ahead. Sorry, that was me.
No,
I was just saying maybe
no.
More.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean the reason it's a 3-step method is I see businesses often doing one or two of those things well, but often if one component is out, then either the execution isn't right or the way that they continuously view isn't right. So if I just unpack that, so A is the analyze. So I love a good bit of data. Comes back to my childhood of problem solving and being a slightly weird kid that liked maths and accounts and those sorts of things at school. But I'm fascinated by the numbers and the data. So to me, until you understand where you are, how the hell do you know where you want to go? So that bit's really important. So I know it's a very top line view, but unpacking that in a business around your market, your customers, your current trading performance, the competitor set, all of those things go into your analyze stage. So you really, really understand your business and the context of how you operate.
Yep.
So that's a big tick. So once you know that bit, then you can start to create the plan, which is the C element of the ACE method. So, what does that look like? How do I set myself up to win? What are the areas that then I really want to focus on, and what does that look like in terms of whether it's category management, supplier management, but what are those elements that I've understood from the analyze stage that I need to go to work on? Again, that's great. I see lots of great plans built, and then businesses go, that's it, I'm done. It's all done. And you go, oh, hang on a minute. The E, which is the execute stage, how much time and effort have you put in to actually implementing it? And as simple as, have you brought stakeholders on this journey with you? Do they all understand what role they need to play? How are you going to communicate it to customers? Have you told your suppliers that you're about to go and do this amazing new review, and they suddenly realize that, oh, I didn't know you needed that much more product? So it's those elements, because to me, and I talked about this in the book, you can unpick all of that amazing work, which could be months, let alone weeks. You could do all that great work and then it falls flat on its face, and that's almost it's inexcusable in my mind to do all that great work and then not give yourself the best opportunity to succeed. So that's kind of, I know there's a lot more substance in the book, but that sort of purposefully 3-step method of how you do all of those things, hopefully in the best way possible, is what I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, I agree. And I've seen many a time where if I'm going into your methodology there, which is a great one. At the end of the day, it's a consistent methodology. Some people may frame it slightly differently, but it just puts it into context of, look, here are the basic steps you need to follow. Now, obviously, the the detail in those steps are very variant on what your business does. But the number of businesses I've seen, and even ones I've worked in, I've probably made mistakes myself too, is you go straight to the C rather than actually do enough work on the A. So when you do that, you get yourself in a huge pitfall. Like, a lot of my time I've spent, going into businesses from a supply perspective, where clearly they hadn't really thought through the analytical side of things, and they started to execute something that really isn't achievable because they haven't really done those steps correctly. Do you see businesses do that yourself, where they sort of skip that part? I know you mentioned you.
Yeah, no, I do, and I don't know whether it's underrated or undervalued, or they perhaps just don't necessarily think about that as much as the other bit. I don't know if it's a procurement thing. I mean, some of the insights profile I used to do in my old team, there's a lot of, if you've ever seen like the color wheel, there's a lot of blue, which is like an analytical side. So I think we're really good at analytical stuff, perhaps less so often the creative side. But then you sort of think the project management side. I mean, the other piece I see is we sort of forget that there's other things also that businesses might be doing at the same time.
Yeah.
So we go, I've got all these ideas, and actually, you know what it's like in business. I think one of the things of being a leader often is the ability to say no, or even not right now. So that element of, I might have all these ideas, and they might all sound really exciting. A, you don't have to do them all at the same time. And B, what about all the other exciting things that the business is trying to do? I don't know, in operations or format or whatever other things the business is doing. So, that ability to be really clear about, I subscribe to do a few things really, really well, not lots of things average, because otherwise, you're going to get probably an indifferent execution in that regard.
Yeah, I think keeping it simple is so important, right? You can probably, I've always found it very hard in my career and people I've worked with that, to be consistent in getting the value you want. If you overcomplicate things, you end up not getting where you want to get to, or you end up getting maybe one thing and leaving 5 things to the side. So I think that, and I think, you called that out. I've seen a couple of things you've posted where you call that out. But I think for me, what is also important is the team, right? And the ways of working. And I wanted to flip this back to the supply chain, because, great that you've got that piece in there, but thinking about the supply chain, bringing that supply chain into all of those phases is so critical, right? If you don't engage with your supply chain throughout that process, you might be pulling analytics internally yourself, but you've got to still validate it against what's out in the real world, right? And that to me is such an important part where I think I still see businesses overlook, and they treat them as actually, we've got to this stage of the process. Now we're bringing the supply chain in, rather than thinking, well, hold on a minute, probably validate some of this stuff first with our supply chain, but don't do it because they're worried that they're going to give too much away about the business. So, I still see that as quite a common thing. I don't know if you do, around how suppliers are engaged and treated throughout that process.
Yeah, and I think it's almost this sort of them and us mentality where we'll engage when it suits us, but actually, we're perhaps not thinking about they're an extension of your team. It's not a transactional, can be a transactional thing, but actually, where's the strategic side of really collaborating? And the thing, the example I give, and I think I reference this in the book, but the example I give is, any business will be limited by lots of things, but principally 2 things. What resource have I got at my gift in terms of people, and how much money have I got? So what capital or revenue or RevX am I prepared to invest? So if I then think about, well, what about all the suppliers? Let's say if I only had 50 suppliers, 50 more times people, capability, experience, knowledge, insights. Why wouldn't you tap into that? That's almost like exponential. And the flip side of it, of course, because I was always quite greedy as a trading director in my businesses, was they're working for me then. They're working on my business and my priorities, which means, guess what? They're not working on my competitor's business to the same degree. So I can't see, I'm sure there'd be people that will challenge that, but to me, it's a no-brainer. The more you can have people on your side, on your team, and reinforcing and accelerating what you do, it's just a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, definitely. And it's quite interesting. When I was taking a look, you've got this sort of flip into that model. You had this sort of bow tie model versus the diamond model, and I
Mm,
suppose that's very, from what I was looking at. When you take, maybe you explain to people what you mean by bow tie and diamond
mm.
before we discuss it, because I think it's
Yeah,
quite
what
relevant.
yeah, well, I mean, literally think about the shape. Yeah, so obviously a bow tie kind of meet it in the middle, right?
Mhm.
So you've got this, not always, but typically imagine a buyer and imagine a seller. So that might be an account manager and a category manager. So they're like the point of the bow tie. And then when you go out, you've got all the other functions. So think about a typical business plan. I want to sell you something. I want to buy some stuff. We're going to go and do some things together. Oh, we need a marketing plan. Right. I'll go away and talk to my teams. Oh, we've got some data things. I'll go away and talk to my teams. So it's very much through here. And obviously these people are probably quite busy. That's not the only account either will have. So there's only so much they can do. So the flip side of that, which is obviously the diamond, is suddenly you've aligned all of the people in terms of functional expertise.
Mhm.
You've put the buyer seller on the outside. You still have a business plan. You still have an owner as to how you want that relationship to work. But what you've now got is direct conversations between people that talk their own language. I'm a procurement expert. I know a bit about marketing and customer experience, but that's my primary skill. I won't know as much about customer experience as people that do it for a living. So
Yeah.
get them talking together, still in the context of what we're trying to achieve as a joined up business plan and a collaboration, but get the experts talking together. So that's kind of what the framework is.
Yeah, definitely, and I really liked it. And when you look through it, the supply chain is an integral part of that. It's part of the
Mm.
team. You're not commoditizing them. You're actually sort of saying, to your point earlier, well, hold on a minute, I should be missing the trick here. Why aren't I bringing them in? Because they're going to work more for me. So I think that was a
Yeah.
really valuable thing that you
Yeah.
said, because that again is something that I continue to see happening. And obviously, I've spent 20 years probably more on the supplier side than I have internal, but I've spent since moving in consultancy. It's just really interesting the different level of discussions you have. But I still felt as a supplier in those days, compared to what I know now, I'm like, oh my God, I wish I pushed my business more to bring me in as a team player rather than just being treated as a commodity. Because actually,
Mm.
I still may have not won that business at the time, but I might have actually been able to help the client get to where they want to get to. Obviously, the ultimate aim is winning, but at
Yeah.
the end of the day, you still want that client to get value from
Mm.
what they're trying to get. So I definitely have learned some things over my time when it comes to that.
Yeah, but I think you build on that, right? I mean, I always, everyone's busy in business, right? I used to think, why are people not more demanding of my time? If something, often not putting a negative spin on it, but if something goes wrong, you'll be straight into people. This isn't working. This isn't happening. What's going on? But actually, what about the things that are going right? And not being disingenuous of the supply base I had, but I honestly could probably count on, well, certainly on two hands, maybe one hand, the amount that I would say were really super proactive
Mhm.
and cared as much about my business as I did. And okay, you'll never, because they're not on my payroll, so they never care as much about your business as you would as a business owner. But I think, why have you not got as much interest and actually mutual respect to challenge things, whether they're good or bad? So if I'm not delivering, I'd expect my supplier to say, Keith, you promised to do this. This was in our plan. Why are you not delivering? Not, oh, it's okay. We're not going to ring him anymore because he's just not done it. That's not a good, healthy relationship. You need to have
No.
trust and be able to challenge each other. So yeah, that bit to me, it's almost, my old bosses used to say, ask for forgiveness, not permission. It's like I would never be apologetic for someone pushing me to do better, to challenge what we're doing, to drive the performance of the business. And it's that performance culture that, I just feels like we're not quite, broad sweeping statement, but we're not quite at that level that I would see as like world class performance standards.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think when I'm going to talk about consistency quickly, because when I split consistency into two things. One is the process, the checklist, the making sure you're doing what you're doing, and following the right way of doing it. The other part of it, which I think I've overlooked throughout my career until recently, is more the human consistent element, which is about challenging people, about being proactive, about being
Mm,
forward thinking, and all those. those pieces that, yeah, great, you've got this, but if you're not consistently doing that as a person, you're going to diminish the value that you actually are trying to get out of things as well. And I think that sometimes gets overlooked because people can hide behind the process. They can hide behind, yeah, well, we're doing this checklist. We're doing the things that we need to do. We've brought our supply chain in. But how have you brought your supply chain in? To your point, are they challenging you? Are you challenging them? So I think that was also so critical in actually getting a long-term relationship with your supply chain.
Yeah, I remember writing an article. It was about 12 months ago now, but I ran a free event online, and the next colleague, we're having this really good debate sort of around this virtual table, and we're talking about, if you go through the last 5 years or so, we had this sort of massive boom time post COVID where, let's be honest, and I don't mean to sound condescending, anyone could make money. You could literally, get me whatever you want from wherever, put a price on it, and I can sell it, because there was just, certainly in construction and building, there was so much demand to get stuff. So I think we got, again, broad sweeping statement, we perhaps got a bit lazy at, it's easy to make money, source it, we're just buying things, we're selling them. It's that whole relationship piece is really, is a lot easier. And we were talking about, remember actually what happened initially with COVID, and go back to the last recession. When times are hard, I think we get really creative, because you think, oh, I haven't quite got the budget, and where can I find some value? Where can I really drive that performance standard? And it's this sort of this details and discipline. So go back to data. Where can I move the dial? What can I do consistently to really drive performance? It's like, I don't get me wrong, I don't want to work necessarily when it's really tough from a recessionary perspective, but the principle I liked of, I think we work smarter and more creative when our back's to the wall. So how do you get that same discipline when actually life's good? Because if I'm hitting budget, well, where's the pressure to go and find more? Well, I'm hitting my budget this week, it's great. If you're not hitting your budget, go and find ways to hit your budget, and it's a different approach.
Human nature is always to defend your back, right? It's what's going to put the next meal on the table and all those wonderful things. But when you're in that situation where you've got a pretty healthy supply chain, you've just negotiated the contract you need to negotiate, hey, let's all just sit back and enjoy life. It's like, no. Take the approach that you've just done and continue being consistent in how you're actually delivering that, because yes, you might have achieved what you needed to achieve from a savings or a resource perspective, or whatever it would be. Your projects have been hit on time, but don't stop there. It is hard though, right? It's not easy to keep kicking on, right? Some people get to their comfort level and are happy with it. Why do I want to go above and beyond what my business has told me to do when I'm achieving what I said I would? But I suppose you've experienced that quite a lot, haven't you? In moving to consultancy, you can't just stop.
Yeah, but and I think there's a bit here around, sort of define. If I said to you, what's a rock star in a business, right? You sort of, without sounding like too corny, but is it someone that does one amazing deal and then does nothing else for the year, or is it someone that, rather than doing this and this, is just here 1 or 2% better every day, every week, every month, never does amazing, never does terrible, but is just not, I don't mean steady, but I mean performing really well, really consistently, because the compounding effect, obviously, of that is far greater than this almost one-hit wonder that everyone says, this guy was amazing. Yeah, but where's he gone? Or where's she gone? Where's that individual disappeared to? They're sort of living off that fame. It's like the band that had their one hit Christmas wonder and makes royalties for the rest of their life, but never had another hit ever again.
No. In fact, if they went out and made a hit every single year, they might have continued to increase the productivity again. We sort of chatted over a post actually on this one, but you're quite profound in the personal skills and motivation and all those sort of things and how important that is. And I'm a big believer that you have to make sure you're fulfilling your motivations at work, because if you're not going to continue to excel and achieve things. Because, if you look at it from a basis of what you just mentioned there, you've got someone who needs to close the deal, you need to get the best deal that you can, you've done it, right? Well, you're obviously motivated to get to that point. But once you've done that, where's your motivations, right? The next deal isn't there. So you have to rethink your strategy and
Mm.
how you're working. And it's not always easy to do that. If that's your core focus and your core value, if you're not necessarily a team player, you're someone who's, a growth orientated. But growth means a lot of things. It doesn't just mean money. It means process. It means, team happiness. It means all those
Mm.
things around it. But
Mm.
yeah, sorry. I
Yeah, no, spot on.
things like that.
Spot on. And again, it's back to that definition of what individuals are. And like you said, growth will mean different things to different people. Some people want a brand new shiny car on the drive. Others are quite happy just to have a job every week. And it is back to understanding your people. But yeah, I'm a big believer. I mean, you can see my sort of energy and enthusiasm in this topic. I'm a big believer. You've got to have fun. Yeah, we go to work. I know it's overly used, but we'll probably spend more time with work colleagues and our families. So how do you get the most out of that, and how do you motivate yourself? Because there's many more dangerous professions than, in my case, buying and selling building materials.
Yeah.
But it's really meaningful. It's really important, certainly in the UK, to do those sorts of things. So how do we enjoy that, but have a real purpose and a real clear vision and mission as to why we're doing what we're doing?
Well, you have to have that. Otherwise, you will be one of these businesses that goes, up and down. You're cyclical on the basis of you've done something really well, right? I'm going to leave it until it gets bad again. Then I'm going to do it well again, and then it's going to go down again. And it's not the eyes of a successful business, because you never go above the peak that you were originally at. Unless you sort of climb the mountain and keep yourself consistently at that level, you can't go to the next base camp. You can't go to the next one. So it's really interesting how all of that sort of team, not team, all that personal motivation and things really. I don't think enough people take impact of it, because it does have an impact on managing your supply chain, right? It's if you're the type of procurement person, and I'm not broad brushing procurement at all here, because everyone that I've spoken to has value in procurement. But if you are that type of procurement person who is focused on the purchasing and buying and getting those things in, how are you working with the rest of your team to make sure it's continued to be delivered? And I think, again, without putting that supply chain in that bracket, you are going to be going up and down that mountain, as we discussed. And that, to me, is, it's might not seem a disaster day one, but when you look back 3-4 years, look at your business, right? You started 3.5 years ago. If you'd have taken that approach, Keith, to go up that mountain and then just be happy to say, you know what, I've got enough business for this year, you're going to fall down that mountain quite quickly, which obviously is not a good thing to do.
No. And I probably made that mistake early on of thinking, oh, this is easy. And then, no, it's not easy. Yeah, that pipeline creation. But that's it. It's like any sort of project, you've got to think what's beyond this thing. Whatever level you're at, I think having short, medium, long-term objectives, but having clarity about, because it's never all done. And I was wrote this week about listening to some of the businesses at the event I was at on Wednesday, and no one's got it all done. It's never all done. And don't ever think you will get it all done. There's no such thing as perfection, but having right, this is this phase, where's the next one? And we talked about a bit like book writing, but you've got to break these things down, partly because otherwise everything just becomes scary and you do nothing. You just end up with inertia of everything seems too big and too difficult. So being really clear about the things you're doing today, but where does that spin off to the next 1, 2, 3, 4 things down the track? Where do you want to be in the next year? But do you know, I also think it gives you a chance to reflect. I had a really interesting question at this event on Wednesday from a lady. So we're 2 years in, doesn't feel like we've done anything. And then she said, I've reduced my supply base from 600 to 200 suppliers. I'm like, well, that's amazing. How have you done that? And actually reflect on, because the danger is you go on to the next. You never actually step back and go, wow, I've actually achieved an awful lot this week, this month, this year, these last 5 years. And I think that celebrating those little wins along the journey is really important.
Reflecting is so important. It was actually quite funny. I was driving my son and his best friend back from an activity the other day, and the best friend was mentioning how she was not feeling happy about her swimming that she was doing. She just come out of an event and finished it. But her mum said, shouldn't you just reflect a little bit on what you were doing 3 years ago? And she looked at her figures and she was like, oh, I'm 50 seconds faster than I was 3 years ago. Right.
Wow.
And I never learned the skill of reflection until I was probably past university, in all honesty. I don't really ever think about it. But even at that age, it doesn't matter what you're doing, it's so important. It's so important. I wanted to just ask you a quick question. You've got experience at corporate business, but you've also, today you're going into a lot of businesses that, might only have 1 or 2 people managing their procurement function versus you mentioned a company earlier, 200 people, 250 people globally, all segregated roles, all well structured. And I don't know if it's well structured or not, but doing specific functions within procurement.
Yeah.
But it must be hard in that sort of small to mid-sized company. You've got to manage everything, right, as a procurement person. So how on earth keep the consistency in ensuring you're attaining value that you need? Like, is it just about keeping it simple and, to your point, not worrying about things? Or is it bringing in additional support to help, outside of what you've got? Like, I've always been interested in how that works.
Yeah, I think there's an element of, because you're right. I mean, I've worked with different businesses of different sizes. I think there's an element of understanding what's working well and what isn't. And therefore, you've got a lot of successful businesses that are actually working quite well with 1 or 2 procurement people. So it's not a question of me coming in and saying, oh my God, you've only got 1 or 2 people, all hell breaks loose. It's saying, right, you're obviously doing well. What are the things that these individuals are doing? But then I suppose, what's the art of the possible? What might that look like? You could recalibrate that role and say, if they didn't do these things, A, would the world stop? Or B, if it would, could they go somewhere else? Or could you process manage them out? Do they really need manual intervention? So I think there's an element in any business of understanding what's working, what isn't, what those individuals are doing, how effective they are. I'm never convinced any business, regardless of how big they are, there's always inefficiencies, right? So there's always something that isn't kind of working. So, and then I suppose it's kind of painted a picture that says, well, what is an alternative to that? Let's say you doubled your team. Well, what would you double it for? What are the additional capabilities you could bring in? Because I am a firm believer in, for one, you don't have to do everything. It's the law of diminishing returns. But are you doing the big things really well? Classic Pareto. But where are you spending your time? And is it on those things that are moving the needle? Because the thing that will happen when you add more people is they'll all create work, but is it work that's really meaningful? And it comes back to, are you really driving the best return for those individuals you've got against where the business is and where the business potentially wants to go? Yeah.
Now, the old 80-20 rule is extremely important. But that's actually, I really do like that answer, because it's, if you reflect on how you approach your business and how you work with businesses, you're not preaching, you must do these processes, you must work this way. If you don't do these things in procurement, you're not going to be successful. What you're basically doing, is going in and saying, look, follow a simple methodology to analyze your business, to build a plan and to execute a plan, and you'll be successful. And that example you just mentioned there, well, for a smaller business, let's look at what you're doing. Let's look at how effective you are doing it. What are the challenges that you're seeing doing it? And then plan to make change. But you might have a list of 100 things you could pull out, but do you really need those 100 things? Focus on 2 or 3 things and then execute. So I think that just explains that quite well, what you went through.
And there is an element of risk and reward. I mean, part of some of the work I do is saying, look, are there any areas that are big red or amber warning lights saying, if you don't fix this, your business has an issue? And I suppose there's an immediacy of, is there anything you're doing that would fundamentally put the business at risk today? Or is it more like in 3, 5, X number of years down the track, this might come back to bite you? But that's what I really enjoy though. When you go in, it's like starting a new job every day. When you go and start with a new client, you get to learn the business, you get to meet the people, you get to understand their market, you get to look at what they're doing. And yes, there's only so many ways you can set a procurement team up, but actually how it's deployed and where each business is on that journey and the maturity curve, it's very fascinating to see different approaches to it.
Definitely. and even you're just looking at the mix of people that are within the team and you know the skill sets that they have, you know, it must be really really interesting. Like before I moved into the role I'm in now, you know, the consultancy work I was doing a similar thing where I was going in and actually it wasn't necessarily the processes and you know the work they were doing. It was actually the fact that the people that they had doing them were very skilled, but actually they just needed to be focused on different things to get more value out of it. So sometimes it's not even about how the business is operating. It's just about, you know, leveraging the people in the right way.
Yeah.
I've gone 30 minutes already, Keith. I can't believe it. There should be a chapter 2 of this. and I really appreciate, because, you know, I never came on here to say, right, at the end of this episode, I want Keith to tell me exactly how, you know, you do X, Y, and Z. You know, really, I just think it's nice for people to hear, you know, the fact that you know, the environment you've worked in, you know, before you became a consultant to what you are now and what you've learned. And I love your focus on trying to be, you know, to be simple, to provide simple methodologies, but really to embrace it. You know, you seem like someone who seems very passionate about procurement, who wants to embrace change and help businesses change. You're not in this world to commoditize things and just to look after your own life. So hats off to you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for your time, Keith. And yeah, looking forward to carrying on speaking to you in the future.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for investing in the book and for giving some articulation of the points, which is great. So really appreciate it, Alex. Thanks so much.
No worries. No, it's a good book. Very good book. Nice and short. I do like books that aren't like this thick. You know, I like them when they're nice and concise and you can actually get to the point quite quickly. So
yeah.
Otherwise I lose focus. So, and I'm sure other people in procurement will lose focus too if you gave them a 50,000 page book that you just like that. Got a year to read through it. By the time you finish reading it, it's evolved already. So
yeah,
nice one.
Yeah.
See you soon, Keith.
Great. Yeah, pleasure. Thanks.